Fabio or whatever Italian guy, was there waiting, and I just kind of wanted to enjoy the year. And obviously, there's many different kind of study abroad programs available for students, non-pandemic years, of course. Um, but what was unique about mine was that we did one semester learning Italian, doing our normal subjects, but then the next semester we actually did our normal subjects also in Italian. So it was kind of, it was definitely not just that typical, like, I'm just going there to party situation. It was a little bit more intense than that. I mean, try reading Machiavelli in Italian and you barely can say cappuccino. I mean, it was pretty tough. But
Wow.
honestly, I really fell in love with Italy. This was back in 2005, 2006, and I came back full time in 2007 to live and just make a lot of mistakes until I was able to figure out how that was going to happen.
Wow, that's pretty impressive that you did actually your classes in Italian also, because I
Yeah.
studied in 95 in Italy, and it was challenging enough back then. I mean, maybe it's just a difference in time as well, but man, it was challenging enough just going to the grocery store.
Oh
I think
yeah.
I'd have lost my mind if I had to actually like do my classes in Italian too. I
Yeah.
mean, just nobody in Italy spoke, I mean, nobody in Rome at least spoke very much English back in the 90s. And it was just like, yeah, walking out your front door, you just had to go, okay, I can do this. I can do this.
I honestly think in a way that's probably better because,
Yeah.
you can, at least in a city like Florence, or even Rome, I mean, you can kind of get away with never speaking Italian. So, in one way, if you really want to learn the language, I always say, like, go to a small town, go to
Yeah.
some random small Umbrian town or somewhere else where they're not going to try to revert back to English. Because even, I mean, I speak fluent Italian now, but sometimes when I'm in a random shop in Florence, they'll revert to English, and I'm just like, no, 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 don't do that, don't do that. No, if I started the conversation in Italian, we're gonna end in Italian.
That irritates me too. And I mean, part of
Yeah,
me, I'm trying really hard to kind of give people grace and think, well, it's maybe because they want to practice
yeah,
Italian with me or
yeah.
English with me. But I'm also like, what? Do I not speak good enough for you?
I mean, you know what, Sarah? I was having this discussion with a couple of girlfriends the other day, and we were talking about exactly this. Because, of course, if I see that somebody is just so excited to talk to an American and they want to practice their English, I mean, what's the harm in that? I don't mind. But what I'm talking about is when you have that like surly shopkeeper or barista serving the coffee, and they just like sarcastically respond in English, and I'm just like, come on. you know and obviously my Italian is better, so it's that's when I get frustrated. But you know what, I actually have tried to I have this new approach of just being like, I just asked them quite frankly, I'm like, why did you switch to English? Is there a reason? Because I'm speaking with you in Italian, and that always kind of throws people off guard, and then they'll hopefully they won't make that same mistake again.
Well, the fun part often for me is also just pretending, not pretending, but not maybe not volunteering that I speak Italian immediately, because sometimes you hear interesting things. I was thinking about
Oh
last summer.
yes.
Yeah, I was in a bar. I was in Messina with my kids, and we went in to a bar to get granitas in the morning and coffee, and it was a totally local bar. And we walk in, and I was about to open my mouth to order something, and the guy behind the counter was like, what is it with all of these foreign tourists who just come into local places? And he just starts complaining about the fact that me and my kids had walked in there. And I just looked at him and I said, in perfect Italian, I said, I've actually been working in Sicily for more than 10 years. And
Yeah.
really, that's not a problem. And that's not typical of the Sicilian attitude. So if you would please be so kind as to serve me and my children. And what was very funny was just to watch his face like, yeah, like,
Yeah, no, it's so embarrassing. It's happened to a couple of my friends, especially when they're haggling over, some kind of leather item or something, and then
yeah.
the person doesn't know that they speak Italian. You find out some interesting things. You got to be really careful, and I'm learning that even more so in Switzerland, where they speak, many different languages. So I don't have any like sneaky language to go to anymore,
Oh,
unfortunately.
man. So tell me, how did you end up in Switzerland?
Well, good question. I never expected to end up in Switzerland, as if people have read my blog before or followed me on social media, I'm Girl in Florence. And I was kind of planning to stay Girl in Florence forever. And I don't plan on leaving Girl in Florence because I have a house in Florence. We go back frequently when it's possible. So the whole idea was, 2020 was a shock to many of us. It affected everyone I know, and us as well. So, what happened is essentially my husband has been working in the same field for the past 12 years in the same company. He's only ever worked in one company, and he's French, he's not Italian. So it was kind of getting to the point where it was kind of like, okay, we just have to accept that this is how it's going to be forever, and there might not be that much room for growth, or we'll have to explore options. And I didn't want to go back to the States. So the compromise was, well, if we have to move somewhere else for job opportunities for him, let's choose France or Switzerland or somewhere at least close to Italy. So he got an offer right before the pandemic really kind of took off in Italy, which was late February. So, I mean, just imagine, like, from one day to the next, it was literally like, because I didn't think, I mean, he's a biomedical engineer, and these kinds of negotiations take a lot of time, and often they don't end up in anything. So I didn't assume, I mean, he did an interview with this company in Switzerland, and I was just like, okay, well, we'll see where it goes. And then I just remember being in France and him telling me, oh, they accepted the offer. And I was like, what? When you kind of, oh, well, they're never going to accept this, but we'll try anyway.
Sure.
And that's what happened. And he's been so supportive of me and all of the crazy stuff that I have dragged him to because of Girl in Florence. Literally, that poor man has been on more blog tours than is humanly normal, and has taken all of my photos and put up with, me being super open about, the good points and the bad points of life. So I feel like I had to do the same. It was like, if we have to go to Switzerland, as if it's a bad thing, I'm willing to do it. And 2020, I just felt like my work is impacted. So financially, of course. Yeah. I work with hotels. I'm a consultant. I work for Italy Magazine, so it's great. And I still have work, and I work from home, but it's impacted. I have less clients than before, and they're not always able to pay. So we just had to make some smart personal decisions for us. And so far, so good. Zug is a place I had never even heard of before we came here. I don't think
I've driven through there.
Huh?
I might have driven through there once.
Yeah, you probably, if you've been near Zurich, and it's a tiny village that's known for being kind of a company tax haven, but it's a really beautiful place to live. It's we have a beautiful lake next to our house, and during the summer, everyone just goes there and swims. You just leave your towel there. You don't have to worry about like your wallet getting stolen or anything. Like, you just go take a dip, come back in, go, bring your whole picnic every single day if you want. And it's close to Zurich. It's about 29 minutes by train, and very close to Lucerne. So whenever I'm feeling a little bit bored, I can go over there. And about 6 hours to Italy. So 6 hours to Florence from Zug.
So by car, it's 6 hours?
Yeah, it's 6 hours by car. And I took the train last time in October, and it was about 5.5 hours. So I just had to do Zug to Milan, Milan to Florence. So it was super easy. Yeah.
Wow.
I know. And there's also a flight. There's many flights from Zurich to Florence. So, pandemic, we'll see.
Yeah.
So hence why I took the train, because I wasn't sure if the flights would get canceled or anything like that. So it's easy. At least I can kind of merge both of my worlds a little bit and keep what I'm doing going, the train going, which, by the way, Zug means train in German, the language I don't speak. I actually hate my husband in a way, because I said, of all the places in Switzerland, you chose the one place where we don't speak the language.
Yeah. So are you learning German then?
Yeah. So I'm learning German. I'm kind of self-teaching myself right now, because there's just no classes in person. At the moment, just the grammar base. And then I'm going to join a group class or get a tutor. So Nico's much better than I am. He's already at like A2 or something like that. A22. He actually was just doing a class in the other room. And yeah, I'm still kind of like, I can order a cappuccino. Hey.
I've been so lazy about German though, because I've been working in Germany for whatever, in Switzerland and other Germanic countries for years, but I've never really bothered to learn much more than like the pleasantries, because everybody speaks English.
Yeah. They
It's kind
speak
of bad.
perfect English, and actually a lot of people here speak Italian or French. They always say they don't. They're like, "Oh, not so well," and then you start speaking, you're like, "Really? You speak perfectly, like, honestly, you speak better than my family in Texas," like, it's it's not even the fact, though, that it's German, it's Swiss German is so completely different that
Yeah.
learning High German is good to a certain point, but then you can't understand what anyone's saying outside.
Are you learning Swiss German or standard German?
I'm learning high. So basically the recommendation from everyone is to learn High German, written and spoken and everything like that, and then you can supplement Swiss German when you're out and about because it's kind of a dialect. So it's hard because Swiss German people, I mean, they only really speak Swiss German. They don't always want to speak High German. But it's still, I want to be able to go to Germany and Austria and speak. I don't want to just learn only the local dialect and not have that opportunity to speak in more places.
Well, and that's a nice way to kind of, like we said, everybody speaks English, so at least
Yeah.
it's an entree. It's a way for you to kind of like talk to people, and then you can shift into English if you absolutely have to.
Exactly. It's funny. I think I'm just embarrassed because I'm always like, Americans don't always have the best reputation of trying to learn other languages. So I'm always trying to revert to other languages. I'm like a petit peu du français or Italiano. And
No,
then
I
I'll go to
totally do the same
English.
thing. I do the same thing all the time too, because it's like I don't want to just be that person that only wants to speak English. But the
Oh
problem with
yeah.
speaking Italian is like, who speaks Italian? Like nobody
Yeah,
else speaks
exactly.
Italian.
Exactly.
When
All well,
yeah, I've been in like Thailand and Cambodia, and people haven't understood me, and all of a sudden I start speaking to them in Italian because somehow I think that's going to help.
I know. It's just because you kind of revert your brain. The way your brain works is that you just kind of think, well, maybe this is kind of similar in some way. It's not at all, but we try.
Yeah,
Survival.
it is. It's survival. Wow, but that's such a great adventure. Are you guys there for the long haul, or do you just are you going to see where it goes?
I mean, honestly, I definitely, so I've always been kind of like, I never wanted to be like an expat or anything like that. When I came to Italy, I had like no lire to my name. I didn't know what I was doing. I was probably had no business being there in the beginning. So I've always kind of considered myself like a scrappy survivor. Like I had to figure it, you know me. I mean,
Oh,
this
I
is
know.
it's one of those things where it's like it was never like, oh well, my parents sent me on a beautiful study abroad year and they paid for everything, and then I met this wonderful guy who then he bought me a house. Like no, 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 no,
Yeah.
no. I was doing every job under the book that you could do to survive. And so I've always kind of been like, okay, and I struggled really with getting the whole legality part of it too. Getting my work visa event, in Italy was a real pride thing for me. I was like, I did it. I did it on my own. I didn't have to get married. I didn't have to do, all these other ways. I was able to do it on my own. So I coming here in Switzerland, the expectation is always that you're kind of an expat. A lot of people get hired here. They come here for a couple of years and then they leave, which is fair enough. But I think for me to really feel like I can integrate in a place, I need to see it as long haul. I need to put 2 feet forward and just make this my home. And then whatever happens in the future happens. Like I said, we have this apartment in Florence, and of course, I mean, my heart's in Florence. It will always be in Italy because that's the place where I feel most at home. And Switzerland has been nothing but good to us, though. I mean, as far as like the comfort of life, red tape, all of these things that we love to complain about in Italy, it has been such a joy in Switzerland. I have to be honest with you. I mean, of course, there's so many stereotypes about wherever you go. Everybody's like, oh, you're not going to make any friends, or they're very cold. And it's true. I don't have Swiss German friends, but I have friends from other places, and they're amazing, and they're willing to meet like a newbie like me. And I don't know anything about, life in Switzerland. So, we'll see where it goes. I like it so far. I like it a lot. And I'm going to try to balance, both of my lives. But as long as I can go back to Italy often, I'm fine. Wherever we are, it's great.
Yeah, well, I think that's really a nice thing about Europe in general is that you
Yeah.
can choose a place and you're really not that far from, I mean, But this is a very American way to look at it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, 6 hours, that's really close.
Oh yeah. No, 6 hours to me is next door because growing up in Texas, if I wanted to go to El Paso or even anywhere else, it was like 11 hours and you're still in Texas.
Yeah, you
So
still haven't left Texas.
yeah, I mean, at least 6 hours and I passed by some beautiful places and I could stop in Emilia Romagna and have some fresh pasta. So, that's a win-win for us.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not a bad situation. So we talked a little bit about like the whole COVID situation before we started
Yeah,
broadcasting, and I'm just curious, what is the situation in Switzerland? Because we know Tuscany now has gone to a red zone, so that means that they're
yeah.
more or less confined to their homes. I mean, they can go out and exercise and go to the grocery store, but that's pretty much it. So what's going on in Switzerland? How do they handle things there?
Well, it's funny. Have you downloaded or even attempted to try out TikTok, Sarah?
TikTok?
TikTok?
My children already told me that they would disown me if I became a TikTok star. My
Okay, I
kids
think
are like, no, no, no.
well, the reason why I bring it up is I am way too old for TikTok as well, and it's not. Yes, I get it. I mean, I think that any kid would not want to see their mom on TikTok. However, I think you need to download it and make like a fake name or something because they have so many funny plays on all of the stereotypes of what's going on with COVID or but they take serious situations and they kind of bring it down to the audience that is younger, around the world. And whenever I see the Swiss ones, which is always there's always, Italy's doing this, and France is buckling down, and Belgium's closed up, and there's always like a Swiss person who's just walking outside with their sunglasses, like not a care to the world, as an example of just how the situation is. So Switzerland, being that it's composed of different areas that speak different languages, there's 4 different national languages in Switzerland and being that we're in the German part, so it means that we have the least restrictions as compared to areas of Ticino or the areas in France. So the closer to any kind of zone that's at risk, every canton, which is like region, has very strong rules of their own. So there's not that many nationwide rules, but every canton has more or less jurisdiction to kind of decide what they want. Although in October, they did come up with some national regulations, like for example, and I'm in like the extreme of like the Swiss Germanness, which is they did not even have to wear masks inside until October 10th in
Oh,
my
wow.
city. So yeah, exactly. Until October 10th in Zug, specifically, Zurich, they already had to already for a while. They didn't have to wear it. They could go to the grocery store without wearing a mask. So
Wow.
there were some rules on how many groups of people can meet and things like that. But generally, it's kind of as if things are completely normal here for the most part. So it's a bit weird, and I don't really agree with it for the most part because Switzerland has had high numbers, really high numbers actually compared to the population. So I do think though that luckily in these smaller places where we live, everyone socially distances anyway. I don't think they want to be near each other.
That's
In
just
general.
Swiss culture, right?
Yeah, I was like, the social distancing. The thing is, we have a ton of grocery stores, so there's never any crowding really, from what I've seen so far. And so, unless you go to the big cities, so Zurich has a lot of cases, but also because it's got a bigger population. But people are doing better to wear their masks and everything like that. But I am kind of that judgy Italian. I will totally admit it. I've gotten it. I mean, not in because Swiss people don't fight with you. Everybody hears about its neutrality and well, I see it from this side. So people won't blanketly disagree with you. It's like the opposite of the U.S. in that regard, where everybody's like screaming at each other and hates each other for their political views. Here, it's kind of like, oh, it's very interesting. Well, I think like this, and it's this very mature dialogue. But it's funny because I've often been like, this is crazy. Like, why are they not, putting more regulations in? It doesn't seem like a good idea. But I also understand that every country has their own way of dealing with this, and there are a lot about personal responsibility. So There's also that aspect too. Like here, trash, there's a million rules on how you recycle, and you can't, vacuum on a Sunday, and you can't use the laundry machine on a Sunday either. But
What?
you can make decisions for coronavirus on your
You
own.
can't
That's fine.
you can't wash clothes on a Sunday?
Unless you have, because here a lot of the laundry machines are shared in a building. They have like specific schedules on who can use it and when. And yeah, one of the rules, because Sunday here is sacred, Sarah. Like, there's no shopping on a Sunday. I mean, you can go out to eat at a restaurant, things like that, but really it's like a family day. So yeah, no, we got a huge list from the relocation agency of like what we were meant to do and not do. It was really, and that was actually the most scared I had been about integrating in Switzerland. I was like, what if I break all the rules? I mean, it's expected that I'm going to break some rules. I'm sure, Nico got yelled at in the street for parking his car on the sidewalk to bring furniture in. And I was like, listen, it's good that you got yelled at because it was going to happen. It
Yeah.
was like, at least it happened already. You got yelled at in German. So,
Wow.
yeah, I know but I have to say, like, if you go on these expat Facebook groups, moving to Switzerland, living in Switzerland, I mean, it's a lot crazier than anything I've actually experienced. Most people are super nice, super friendly, super helpful. Nobody's told me off for anything really. And, I just think it's also your personality, you know?
Gosh, that's got to be a big shock to the system going from Italy, where it's sort of, I don't know, I wouldn't say lawless, because actually they do have a lot of rules, but
They
they're
do have a
just,
lot of roles, yeah.
they do, but they're much more like, we do have rules, but we'll work with you kind of thing. And I know in Switzerland, that's not really the case.
It's like the mentality is just so completely different. People are in Italy, the rules are meant to be broken because there's too many rules.
Yeah.
So they have all of these different stratospheres, when it comes to taxes or different things that you're meant to do, or the TV tax. Italians will come up. I mean, they're brilliant. They'll come up with 1,000 different ways on how to justification for not paying this or doing that, and really creatively. Honestly, it's kind of impressive. And that was actually always a part of me that I struggled with living in Italy, because I am a goody two shoes and I do play by the rules and I like following the rules, and I'll stand in line, and I was never very good at blending into the culture of kind of being a little bit clever football.
Yeah.
I'm not good at that. So in a way, being in Switzerland, I feel a lot more comfortable, at least when it comes to like important stuff like the taxes, or like the kind of just knowing more or less what they expect. But then I also really appreciate the flexibility of Italy. I mean, I think that in life, if you learn how to adapt to your environment and you learn how to be flexible and kind and empathetic, that's going to take you a lot farther than being that person who's spying outside of the window, looking at what your neighbors are doing and calling the police. Like, that's not my style either.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see it both ways. Like, I mean, I've been in Italy so many years now, working, that it's like I've adapted to that sort of, and I appreciate that way that you can always make something work. You can always, even if there's a rule against it, it's not really a rule. It's just it's a pirate country. It's guidelines, not really rules.
And no is never really. It's not a hard no.
There's no hard no, but in any case in Italy, I mean, hard no's don't exist. But the thing about it is, though, that it's hard sometimes, unless you're there a long time and you really understand the culture, to understand what are the rules that actually are enforced. Because there may be 1,000 rules, but you don't really know what's going to be enforced. And so it's almost a little bit like, it's hard because the expectations don't make sense. An easy thing is, for example, I got a speeding ticket last year. I've never gotten a speeding ticket before because that's never enforced. And so it was sort of like one of those things where if I had the feeling that it was enforced, I would drive the speed limit. But then I get this sort of surprising ticket, but I was just following the flow of traffic. You know what I mean? So in a way, my American brain also likes the idea of rules being consistent.
Oh yeah. I mean, when you grow up with that kind of mentality, and it's kind of, as horrible as rules can be, and rules are meant to be broken, we do find comfort in the fact that those are there to kind of control, I don't know, human behavior in a way. But yeah, in Italy, I mean, I always go to an Italian friend and ask, for advice about things like that. Because even with buying a house, like what's normal and what to expect, because even if you've lived there for a really long time, if you're not born there and you don't have this like intricate network of family, Italian family to help you, it's really hard. I mean, these rules are hard for them to understand, much less anyone else.
Oh, well, yeah. And the custom in Italy is always, you don't just pick up the phone book and find the plumber. I mean, you have to know somebody. Like
Yep.
anything I want to get done in Italy, I would never just do a Google search and try to find somebody who offers a
Gonna
service
be
like
the most expensive option if you do a Google search.
I mean, one, it's stupid too, but it's like that's just one of those quiet under the surface things that if you weren't in the culture a lot, you wouldn't know. Like I would never ever Google search any service at all. If I need something, I call a friend who lives in
Yeah.
the city or nearby, and I'm like, "Do you have a cousin that does this?" And always somebody has a cousin.
Yeah, no, no, always, always. And it's like a scratch your back kind of thing. Like you're helping somebody get a job and things like that. So it's more, yeah, absolutely. I do the same for everything.
I'm assuming in Switzerland it doesn't work that way.
I mean, it is. I'm learning what is. No, the recommendation thing is pretty common here too. At least with the people I meet. So because people, well, money saving tips, for example, because Switzerland is quite famous for the cost of things, of course,
Yeah.
for things being quite expensive. But of course, the salaries are really good here too. So it kind of balances out if you actually live here and work here. However, there's so many things that when you first come in here, when you come here, you just don't know. Like, you might buy a train ticket not knowing that there is the hop tax, which is just kind of the membership that you buy annually here, which all of the transport is half off in Switzerland for this special membership that basically every Swiss person gets. So without that, people will, I find that people love to kind of give me recommendations on how to save money or how to get this best deal or how to recycle properly and stuff like that. So there's a lot of generosity when it comes to kind of helping a struggling person fit in or not make a mistake.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would feel more comfortable doing a Google search and finding somebody
Yeah.
for things
So,
here.
so that actually, I'm curious about your impressions about costs, because I was actually just having this conversation a couple of days ago about how odd it is that food in the United States is so expensive. My food bill for me and my two sons is like $170 a week. It just is.
Yeah.
It's crazy because like this summer, I was feeding the same number of people, but I was spending maybe 50 or 60 euros at the grocery
Yeah.
store. I mean, the food in the United States is shockingly expensive. And I'm just curious, when you look at the things, because I think that we have this in our imagination that everything in Switzerland is ridiculously expensive. So what are you finding to be a bargain, and what are you finding to be as expensive as you expected?
So when it comes to bargain, well, being that Switzerland is famous for its wonderful cows, right? I mean, it's practically a national monument is walking by a field with a bunch of beautiful cows overlooking a wonderful landscape. So what I mean by this is that cheese, dairy, milk, things like that are very affordable and excellent. The cheese here is, I mean, we can't stop eating. I'm Gruyere every day of the week. So, and they're all about the fondue and the raclette and everything like that. So, the cheese, dairy, if you're a vegan, I would imagine it could be a little bit difficult, but they have substitutes for you here. I mean, it's, at least here in Zug being so international, you have tons of options from all over the world, which is nice. But what's really, really pricey here is meat. Meat is expensive. I'm often walking around the grocery store looking at this beautifully packaged, pieces of chicken breast, and they're so expensive. I'm like, do I really need this? Am I going to become a vegetarian? Maybe so. It was really hard for me the first couple of weeks in Switzerland when I would do food shopping. Also, because I didn't know about all the options available, which grocery stores, Co-op, Migros, or Lidl.
Yeah.
Like Lidl, for example, doesn't have the best reputation in Italy. You go to a Lidl in Florence, it's like somebody has just dumped everything on the floor somewhere. I mean, it's just a mess. It's like a
Lidl.
Target. It's like a Target during Black Friday.
Yeah,
So
that's a good comparison. I think of it more as like, yeah, a Walmart after like at the end of a long day. It's always, but I go to the one in Palermo. The Lidl in Palermo is like schifoso. It's like you don't
no,
even want to go in there because everything's been rated, but it's also really low quality stuff. But I know
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of Lidl.
They have. I always had this reputation back in Florence because a few times I'd been there. I mean, I just saw some stuff that was weird. However, here, not the case. I've been to Lidl many a time. It is, and they have excellent produce and meat and things like that. So they stepped up their game, at least here. I mean, I do also think that Switzerland, for being so pricey for so many things like that, what I've eaten here and tried here has been excellent as far as quality. So you definitely can't go out to eat that often because that's expensive. Any
That's
kind
true.
of service is
Yeah.
expensive. You're giving, someone's providing a service, whether it's at a restaurant or installing something or an accountant or anything like that, you got to expect to pay some money. So a lot of people eat at home more, and that's what we do. We go out to eat sometimes, but mostly eat at home. But it's okay because it's COVID year, so I've been eating at home anyway, even in
Yeah.
Italy.
That has been my observation in Switzerland is that the
Yeah,
out is stunningly expensive, like shockingly expensive. But
takeout is the same price as eating at the restaurant.
is it really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
have never noticed a difference. Like, cause I love Indian food. That's my go-to. I want some good takeout, and I'm very jealous of your Mexican takeout when you have your little post that. I'm just like so jealous. I miss it so much. I make Mexican food at home, but still, I would love to order some Mexican takeout. But I tried, of course, to research that here, and I was just like, it's not even worth it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think about when I've been with groups in Switzerland. There was I think it was last year, or the year before. I just happened to have the hotel didn't have a room, so I ended up at this apartment with a big kitchen, and so I thought, oh, it'd be fun to cook for my group because I really like to cook, and I never get to do
Yeah.
that. So, to feed an individual person at a restaurant is a minimum of $25 minimum.
Oh.
Like that's just a sandwich and a drink is $25, and
Yeah.
or more. And so I went and I bought groceries, and I think I spent about $150 or 150 euros in the end. And I fed 28 people off of that because, yeah, well, because, other thing like the grocery store, the co-op, I thought was pretty reasonable. I mean, you could
Yeah.
get quite a lot for your money
You do, you do. You get a lot. I mean, despite the first couple of weeks of being kind of like, oh my God, what's the cost of this? I did. I went through that moment and I feel good about it now. I don't feel the same way about it. I just started to kind of reasonably assess like what we're getting for what we're buying, and the quality was good. So I'm more happy about that. For me, the quality is important because, everybody, I'm from Italy, and the quality at the markets and things like that are excellent. So I was scared that I was going to come into a different environment. But it's not that, this is a very camping picnic culture too. Everyone on a Sunday, if it's nice weather, is out and about in the surrounding hills and mountains. And there's always picnic sites that are impeccably kept up. I mean, they leave you firewood, they leave you everything, and you can just bring all your entire lunch or dinner. And I've seen people cooking their fondue up there. I mean, it's incredible. Like, you want to do that. They make it so nice that you want it. That's a very appealing option. Whereas camping before, I was like, I don't know if I'm really that kind of girl. Like, yeah. But now I'm open-minded to it because it's so gorgeous here. I mean, it's what you do.
That's cool. So now that it's getting towards winter, have you gotten snow yet?
So not snow yet, not over here. So I was looking at the forecast last week and they said, oh, it's going to get cold and maybe there'll be snow at the end of the week, but I doubt it. I feel like it's just going to be rainy and foggy, but I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I don't think it snows that much in this area. It's a little bit, it's not high enough for it to really get that kind of snowfall that you would expect. But it's really easy to reach everything that has snow because we're in Switzerland. I mean, there are mountains everywhere. There's gondolas everywhere where you can hop on and go up and have your, fondue or raclette there on a mountain hut and then come back down. So we did have to get snow tires though. That's a requirement here in Switzerland. So that was kind of new for us. We're like, oh, okay.
That kind of makes sense. So
Yeah.
are you going to start up a blog for like Girl in Florence, but for Switzerland?
So basically, I thought about this a lot. I have my Instagram page, Girl in Zug. So I just kind of replicated. I mean, obviously very creative over here. Created just Girl in Zug because it was easy and available. just not to spam Girl in Florence with Switzerland. And it's also confusing for people, you know, they're like, oh, you left, or what's happening? So I often have to explain that. But what I want to do with the blog is, I mean, in the future, I might consider buying the handle and Girl in Switzerland or Girl in Zug and putting it together with my domain. But for now, I'm just going to incorporate Swiss content in my blog that's already existing because I've put so much work into it and it's a brand in its own right. So it just makes sense to kind of add this new category and keep doing what I'm doing. Because at the same time, I'm still heavily working in Italy. You know, I'm coming out with my Christmas made in Italy gift list. That should be out tomorrow. And I'm trying really to help these small businesses because, you know, everyone is so badly affected by COVID, whether it's directly by getting sick or, you know, economically. So I feel like if you're a blogger or you're an influencer or you do what you do online, this is the time to prove that and show how you can kind of help the local community. So
Yep. Well, and that's the same thing that I've been doing with Guide Collective we just started our Christmas market this weekend because
yeah.
and it's not just people in the Guide Collective, but it's also people that we like that work in Italy because, well, all over the world, because it's really, there's got to be a way to support people. You know, if we're going to be buying stuff for Christmas anyway, why?
That's what I say too. I'm like, if you're already, because this is the thing, you got to be really careful. The last thing I'm going to do is encourage anyone to do anything dangerous at the moment. So I'm not even telling them to go to the shops. I'm just saying simply buy online, share as much information about them as possible. You know, if you're in Florence, there's so many home delivery options for food, but then also let's help these makers as well, who are really, really struggling because, you know, they don't have that tourism foot traffic like they did before. And not everybody has this amazing digital platform. It's expensive to do if you're on your own. And, you know, you got to pay so much in AdWords or Facebook ads to get any kind of traction. So I think it's the least we can do to kind of help. And, you know, they really, really appreciate it right now. So I feel like I have to, I mean, obviously I want to, but it's also super needed. Like we want these places to survive. Like when the pandemic is over and we go back to all of these places that we love, we want to make sure they're still standing.
Well, and that's a real concern, you know, just my trip to Italy really, that screamed at me walking around. I mean, I'm concerned about restaurants that I've always eaten in. I'm concerned about shops that I like recommending I mean, a lot of these shops barely made any money to begin with.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, it was hard even before the pandemic, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. So no, I absolutely think what you're doing is wonderful. And, you know, I'm trying to kind of do the same thing with
Likewise.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great for those of us with social media voices to actually do the right thing right now, do something good to try and mitigate the situation for people that are struggling. But it's also a fun thing for people that follow us, you know, because we have a little bit of the outside world come to their home. So that's a neat thing too.
Oh yeah. I mean, you know what? I'm all about what I learned I was in obviously Italy for the first lockdown in March and April. And it was, I mean, I'm happy I went through it in a way because it was so hard. I mean, it was extremely difficult I was in my house for 2 months. I mean, Nico did all of the grocery store runs and we have a dog. So, I mean, that was like that was the golden ticket, you know, was to be able to have a dog and go for a walk. But even that was around the block and then back upstairs. So it wasn't a pleasant thing to be outside during that time. So I remember what that felt like. And I feel like it feels a bit like this again, you know, maybe not as crazy as March and April, but you know, Tuscany being a red zone has a huge impact. So I just feel like even if I'm in Switzerland, I'm still in Florence in a way because I'm talking to people every day. I'm asking how they're doing. I'm trying to show people abroad that there's so many different virtual ways to connect with Italy. You know, there's lots of cooking classes or experiences. A couple of my friends who are guides do lectures and really interesting topics. Like I've learned so much from just being at home, really. And good for me too. I mean, even that I'm not physically there all the time anymore. So it's a way for selfishly as well, for me to be able to connect with what's going on. But, you know, hopefully this is something that can even carry on post pandemic. I hope, because, you know, there are a lot of people who aren't, I'm sure you get it too, who would love to go on your tours, who maybe physically can't, or, you know, something happened in their family. And if there's a way that they can kind of get that touch and taste of Italy virtually. Like, even if there's not a pandemic, we should keep that going.
Well, and that's been the thing that I've been really talking up when I've been, interviewed by the media for the Guide Collective, that, everybody, that's the first question people always ask me. So is this just for now? Is this just for
Yeah, that's a good question though.
effort into the Guide Collective because it's just to keep people busy for now? And at first, maybe that was sort of the intention, but now
Yeah.
that I'm seeing the possibilities of the things that we can do, I'm realizing that actually we have a whole new audience of people that we can really reach, and we can do something cool. The other thing I think about is that a lot of people who are aging out of travel, people who have been great travelers that have traveled with me in the past or with my colleagues, this whole pandemic thing may push them out of their comfort zone for leaving the country anymore. So so I think that there's a lot of really cool opportunities to figure out. That's why every day we're working, trying to figure out what are the best methods, like what are the different things we can do. I'm going to do my virtual cooking classes. My friends are going to keep doing their walking tours. Like, we're going to keep doing this stuff just to kind of see what feels good, what works, what do people enjoy. And how do we help people who maybe couldn't even consider getting on a plane? How can they have that experience? It's a cool.
And they really, it should, I think the travel community should have always been more inclusive to that, because that was always there. I mean, think about how many messages you probably get on Facebook or Instagram of people saying like, your posts bring me so much joy, and I feel like I'm with you. And you always you think of like, well, what are their situations? Like, what's happening in their house? I'm always just very curious about not only what, what's orbiting in my world, but what's going on in theirs. To also better understand, as you said, how to provide them with better content, and make it so that it's an experience that, hey, you don't have to go far from your home to get this. I mean, obviously, there's no comparison of being in the country and experiencing these things, but we have so much technology now. We can provide a lot more than we used to. I mean, I'm not an expert. I don't know how to make perfect videos or anything, but I do what I can,
Yeah, me too. I mean, I look at some of the things that I posted or I put together, and I'm just like, oh, it's so amateurish. It's so bad. But I think part of it is that I don't know if I call it amateurish, but the rougher quality of it is just real,
Yeah.
Some of
I agree. Sometimes overly processed. I mean, this is the thing. I have so many friends that are just like, I would love to do this, but I don't want to because it's not perfect, or, other writers or the bloggers. And I'm like, just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. Because honestly, if you have that block in your head, and I mean, I do that maybe to my own detriment sometimes. I'm sure I make tons of mistakes all every day when I'm writing and what I'm doing. And I own up to it. Somebody says, oh my gosh, this is wrong. I'm like, probably right. I'm going to just look into that. But that's the whole thing. It's like, if you don't try, if you don't like put something out there, if you're not making an effort to do it now, you don't know what's going to happen in the future. So waiting too long to make sure it's perfect, I don't know.
So that brings me to just the general question. How did you even start Girl in Florence? So you had moved there just because you wanted to live there, but then what gave you the idea to start a blog? Which, by the way, for people watching, if you don't follow Georgette, you really have to, because she has done the most marvelous job of covering Florence. I mean, you really have become kind of the expert on everything Florence, which is impressive considering the depth.
Well, I appreciate that. That's very, very kind of you to say. I literally started the blog initially, like how everyone else, you start writing posts that you think are only going to be read by your dad and like some uncle. I mean, I didn't have these expectations of being a blogger and doing my work through the blog and everything like that. At the time, it was this kind of weird golden era of blogging where people were really writing long form articles and kind of opening themselves up to kind of all kinds of topics, and hard topics too, of like the struggles of integration and all these different things. Like, I felt that I was no longer a student, but I wasn't married with kids. I was in this weird middle ground when I was in Italy the second time. So I struggled to meet people who were in that same boat. This is before you could go on Facebook, any Facebook group, and be like, hey, does anybody want to meet up tomorrow? Like, this was not that era yet. So I just had to like organically meet people, or simply, connect in a different kind of way. So I would read all of the blogs that I could of people actually living in Italy. And what I resonated with most was people who I'm not really like into I mean, not that I'm not into eat, pray, love and things like that, but I really wanted to know what it was like on the daily. You know, I didn't want to see just the best parts. I wanted to know the bad parts too. So after reading all of these experiences, and there were a lot of people who were incredible writers who still are writers and maybe have moved on to different things, but I still think about their posts because they meant a lot. You know, I remember one of woman who wrote this amazing article on her blog about, you know, the nonni economy in Italy, of how, you know, so many people have a lot of wealth through the grandparents saving in World War II, is because I always struggled with this kind of, well, how does one person take care of themselves in their 20s? Like, how can you afford to make 800 to 1,000 euros a month and survive? And it kind of well put out like how the structure of family works in Italy. And through Girl in Florence, I just simply saw this gap of content in Italy or in Florence that kind of told people what all the interesting things there are to do in the city, that aren't translated into English, but that I thought people would find valuable, you know. And we're lucky in Florence, we have an incredible English language newspaper, the Florentine. But I was looking for something a little bit different. You know, I was thinking like, well, what about people that are in their 20s like me, that are working and sweating and dealing with all this kind of stuff. And I wrote about everything, you know, the free things that I found to do, the struggles of integrating into Italian family life with my ex-boyfriend, and all of just kind of the weird, interesting things that I discovered and found. And you know, eventually, and honestly, I don't know about you, but do you ever look back at like, you know, the beginning of your website or your articles, and you know, just how raw and vulnerable you are, all the things that you could talk about in, you know, 10 years ago versus now? Like, I'd probably get murdered for saying half the stuff that I said. As you, just, you have to be very politically correct.
My articles, like I just need to go back and reformat, because I haven't put any new written content out in a long time, because I've been focusing on this live stuff. And
Yeah.
oh boy, going through all my old writing, I'm like, can I just delete the whole thing? I just want to delete my whole website and start over. Like,
Listen, Sarah, I have some advice for you.
okay.
I got an intern this year for the first time. Just got an intern a million years ago, but finally got an intern this time, and for this past, let's say, semester, and virtually, of course. And what I had her do, or what I'm having her do still, is she's responsible for going into all of the archives of my blog, fixing it, updating the photos, correcting the text, notifying of anything crazy I might have said. And it's a lifesaver, because literally just having that extra set of eyes to go back in that content. And, you know, honestly, I mean, I thought about that too, deleting a lot of this stuff. But I was like, that was me, man. That was me back then. And part of the reason that people started to follow me and write to me, and I gained a bit of traction, was that I was willing to talk about all these different things.
Sure.
And you know, now we have to be so careful, don't we? You know, anytime you write something or share anything that could be mildly political or controversial, you need to think long and hard about it because of the consequences online. And I understand that, but it was just a different time back then. And I was able to kind of, if I was to write something, you know, negative about my Italian experience back then, it would be kind of like fun. I mean, people kind of got the joke a little bit, whereas now it would be like, well, you know, I mean, it's a lot more contentious at the moment. And it has a lot to do as well with the fact that people are just nervous anyway right now. You know, COVID and the pandemic and everything that's gone on has made people a little bit more trigger happy with their words and responses, I feel like.
And I think that the problem that I'm having right now is figuring out what is the right kind of content to be putting out right now. For me, I feel like these live streams have been easy and fun and light, and you get to know people that I know. And I think that's a really fun thing. But then when I sit down and I want to write, you know, what I was writing in the past, kind of like you do, was a lot of like travel tips and what's the best way to do that? Because that's my guidebook writer brain.
Yeah, of course. You want to help, you want to give somebody an answer.
Yeah, like what's the most efficient way for you to see all the museums in Florence? You know, what is the best way for you to buy train tickets to go get to Sicily? Whatever. I mean, it's like I'm always crunching out what are the efficiencies, what's the best way to travel, and what's the best way to pack, and all this. So that kind of stuff is not even useful right now. So what I've just been kind of reflecting on is I want to start writing again, but what is it that I should be writing about? I suppose the thing that I've never focused on, and I should, is like travelogue stuff. When I've written travelogues, people have really liked it. And so that might be the wintertime project, is to just go through sort of my mental archive of things that have happened and just be a storyteller, you know, because
I
maybe,
was gonna say, that's really, I know what you mean though. I mean, I do think that we all have that tendency, especially when you're used to writing guidebook stuff and things. I feel you on that, because I feel the same way. I'm always like, what are the opening hours? And how do what are
yeah,
the secret savers? Which is good. That's great. I think that's it. I'm a big believer in I mean, if you're writing something, it should have a purpose, right? It should have this, it should provide value. At the same time, there's just as much value with telling a story that you yourself have lived, and sharing that story. So, and often it's something that, I mean, I think about one blog post that I love to share whenever I'm talking about like what I do for work and things like that, because I'll go to universities and explain my job and stuff like that. And I always pull up one blog post that I did that was talking about one experience I had on a blog tour in Tuscany. And they, of course, they always bring you to like the best restaurants and all these amazing experiences, because they want you to tell the story of the region in like the best way possible, of course. I mean, it's the way it works. But one time, I went to like a terrible restaurant and the worst service. And it was like a joke from beginning to end. And, here I have to write about it too. It was a requirement. So I wrote about it. I literally called it the best, worst like lunch I'd ever had in Tuscany. And it ended up just being kind of a story. And it wasn't even a negative, oh my God, this restaurant's horrible. I mean, obviously you got the hint that the food wasn't wonderful, but it was also kind of endearing, because, we were being served by this man who had to have been over 80, and all this weird stuff was happening. And then we ended up bonding as a group, whereas before we were a little bit more shy with one another. So I feel like those kinds of stories, like walking into that coffee shop and having overheard that conversation in Italian about you, like I would love to read that. I get kind of, I don't know. I mean, I have to be honest, I get bored, and I imagine other people are too, when we try to achieve this kind of perfection of, you want to get that. I want to make sure that my blog has the best up to date information and the most concise wording possible, which is wonderful. But we also forget to be like us, it's that personality and bringing out like, why do people like Sarah? Why do we follow Sarah? What is it about her that's special? And it's like, well, I know, and it's hard to answer it yourself, but it's like,
we don't know.
it's the stories though that they resonate with your warm personality and your honest way of telling it. And it's like, if you kind of let that barrier down of, I don't want to sound stupid, or I don't want to come across as this, and you just write what you want to write, at least a good first draft, and then you can edit it later and publish what you feel like. But still, I think that we go back to that kind of basics of just describing what we feel and how it really went. I mean, I think there could be some joy in that, because people can't travel right now.
I think part of what's difficult, and when I talk to you, or I talk to friends that I have that I think have lived incredibly interesting lives, these are just our lives. I mean, I know I've lived an incredibly interesting life, but it's my life, and so it doesn't seem interesting. You know what I mean? And that's always the advice I try to give to anybody who wants to be a writer, especially a travel writer, is you may not think that you're interesting, but you probably really are. I think about our mutual friend, Joanne, she's a really interesting person because she's married to a Swiss Guard. And like that, when I first met her, I'm like, you should have a blog. Like you really should write about, because this is just your daily life, but it's a daily life that's so different than anybody else, and that's kind of the part when I start thinking, okay, I want to sit down and write. I don't know where to start, because it's like, there's just too much. There's too much, but there's also the question of, is that really interesting? I mean, I do have some outrageous stories that would be fun to share, but also some of the other stories, I'm just not, it's just hard. It's hard to know what's going to be interesting to people, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, you got to take some risks. I would start with a couple and see how people resonate, and don't be scared to ask. Something I try to do a lot with my audience too is to be like, what do you like? Honestly, what do you want? Like, let's openly have a conversation. Is this working? You guys are the audience. You can tell me. Not too humble to change my strategy. I mean, I could be a lot to get, people are being pounded with content left and right online, and it's hard to choose what you want to follow and why you want to follow them. So I think instead of trying to, I need to put all my eggs in one basket and be the best at everything, it's like, okay, let's focus on what we can do right now, what we feel good about. So like you right now, what do I feel good about? I feel good about helping local businesses survive in any way possible and doing what I can, and then hopefully providing a little bit of humor and real talk. So it's like literally this kind of combination of, if I can make somebody laugh, if I can talk about how much it's been really hard to deal with the mental, uh, you know, anything with the pandemic, and then what's going on with your future, not being able to plan the future, all those problems that we're all thinking about. If we openly talk about it, it's better. So I kind of think like showing your human side right now is really awesome. I don't personally resonate at the moment with content that is kind of, oh, look at this wonderful photo of Paris, let's go there tomorrow. Like, it's a bit tone deaf at the moment.
Well, and yeah, and that's really the problem, isn't it? Is what is the right tone? What is the right
Yeah.
thing? And it's also just, I getting out and about and encouraging people to explore is maybe not the right thing. So
Yeah, you can't really be like, just get that autocertificazione and go on your way. It's like,
yeah, I mean, it's just that there's a fine line between wanting to be inspirational and to give people a window into the world, but also being responsible. And that's a
yeah.
really difficult line to walk right now. So, I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I think that, yeah, so that's been the challenge, I think. And I'm sure you've been living that same challenge.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's being super aware, because when you have an audience that maybe is North American or Australian, and then you're living in Italy, and then now I'm in Switzerland, so there's a lot of different layers and opinions about what's right and wrong, and and very strict is, and people are really, it's a hot button topic at the moment: mask, no mask, how people wear them, or what should people be doing? Should they be going out and exploring, or should they only be at home? And so I find that we tend to get really fixated on these things.
Yeah.
And, I'm not scared to talk about it. I just don't want to get in fights with people online.
Yeah, it's like, is it irresponsible to encourage people to think about travel? And I know some people are traveling. You can
Yeah.
travel places. You can go
Yeah.
to Egypt, you can go to Turkey, you can go to Mexico. And I have to say, for a hot minute, I've considered all of those things, because then I can keep working. I can
Yeah.
keep writing, and I can keep content creating, and I can broadcast and give people this. I mean, there's a positive in that gives me the opportunity to let the lots of people who can't travel feel like they are. But on the other hand, we're kind of role models, and we sort of have to, do the right thing and walk the talk the right way. So I don't know. It's a struggle. I just noticed that Danielle, our mutual friend, Danielle O'Terry, is also grappling with these same things.
Oh my gosh. Everyone though. I mean, I feel guilty that I'm in Switzerland and there's so much freedom here. But it's not also safe either. So I mean, I have a lot of, unlike the first lockdown in Italy, for example, a lot more people I know actually have COVID this time around.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's a completely different situation. Whereas before it was kind of like, okay, I know my friend has this grandmother that had it, but that was about it last time. Now, at least 5 of my friends have had it, and not all of them, it was not all asymptomatic situations. I have a family member who passed away from COVID, and I'm dealing, I mean, it's not, it's something I feel very strongly about. My husband's family all work in the medical field and things like that. Being extremely respectful of advice of being, safe and staying close to home, and wearing the right kind of protection and things like that. I think that we owe it to humanity to kind of follow these guidelines that are, if we trust a doctor for our gallbladder surgery, we should trust them with this too. So you don't pick and choose when it applies to you, right? So I just feel like, yeah, I got to walk the talk, and things will get better. It's not going to last forever. This is going to be a hard winter, and it is unfortunate for many different reasons. But then I keep thinking, well, hopefully, as you said at the beginning of the call, it'll be a distant memory.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I was talking to my business partner this morning, and it sounds like there's a whole bunch of new good news on vaccines. So, I mean, we can,
Yeah, there is.
which for me, at least right now, is a good, at least there's a light at the end of the tunnel, whereas so far it's only been tunnel. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, and the worst part, for a tour operator is, well, geez, I don't know how to plan anything, and I mean,
Yeah,
as well, you have your apartment. How do you plan if you're going to rent it out, or if you're going to be there?
it's
There's
sitting there.
our lives are all up in the air, which is really, I'm good with chaos, but this amount of chaos is a little much.
Well, especially when if you're planning tours, you really do, people like to book those things in advance. So
Yeah.
it is really stressful. Like I think I feel a lot for a lot of my friends who work as tour guides and things like that, and they're completely, yeah, they're doing virtual lectures and things like that, but it's not the same. It's not bringing in the same volume of cash as before. And they're struggling, and it's a long year. It's been a long year and it's going to be a long winter. So I understand and empathize with the frustration that people feel. But I mean, at least in Italy, I definitely get the vibe from at least my own friends, and not every. I mean, of course, it depends on who you talk to. Everybody understands why there's these restrictions, and it's not great, but nobody wants to. I mean, when you have a friend who's been in the hospital and they're explaining to you what they've seen, it kind of changes your outlook. You immediately feel guilty for even complaining about not being able to go somewhere. You're just like, I just need to shut up and ride the wave for the moment, and then hope for the best.
Yeah, hoping for the best is the only thing we can really do right now. I have
Yeah.
had a request, just so you know, a lot of people have been asking about Ginger. Is Ginger around?
Oh,
Isis
well,
just
my
came by.
husband's on
And
the couch
Isis,
right now.
let's see.
I'll just show you what I'm looking at right
Hi,
now.
Nico. Nice to meet you.
Ginger's
Oh,
very happy.
oh my gosh, look at that happy pup.
Ginger, do you see? Everybody wants to say hi. Literally, the who's benefiting from the pandemic is every pet.
Oh my gosh, yeah. My cat, Isis, is like, she's never been so soft because we just pet her all day long. Yeah.
I know, and that's your cat, the one you were holding, right?
Oh my gosh. And Isis, every time I'm on a Zoom call, if I'm trying to film a video, if I'm on a Zoom call, she always has to come and make her appearance every time. Like, she's such a princess. It's
Well,
ridiculous.
it's so funny how they can sense when like Nico was on a work call before and Ginger was like whining outside. I mean, they know they want to be present and sometimes just happy to like be behind you in the chair.
Yeah.
Or just kind of watching, they know that there's something going on, that they're humans paying attention to the screen.
Yeah. I think it was a year or two ago. I was trying to do a packing video and I had all my stuff laid out on the floor and I had my tripod up, and every single time I turned on the camera, Isis would come and just sit on my suitcase. And I'm just like, ugh. And if I put her on the other side of the door, she'd just start whining. And so I thought, okay, well, this is just a feature of every Adventures with Sarah video, is that Isis is going to show up because she has to make her appearance. And just like you saw, she got in my lap and she wanted to be on camera for about a minute and then she was done.
I like it though. She's like, listen, I gotta show that I'm here. And then, I'm busy. I got plans.
Yeah. Yeah, she's out of here. So yeah, yeah.
I mean, thank God though. I'm so happy to have Ginger because she brings us so much joy and we're ridiculous. We talk to her all day long. She's like part of she's staring at me right now. I know Ginger. She wants pets all the time. So, but thank God, it's like having pets is having therapy in a way.
Yeah, actually, and one of my friends was talking about how she wished she had a dog. She lives in Tuscany, and I'm just like,
oh yeah.
Somebody in Italy should just have like a dog rental agency where you can actually just go rent a walkable dog so you can get out of your house more.
I know there were a lot of really funny memes and jokes about that during the first lockdown of like dogs with pictures of signs like you can take me out for 10 euros.
Yeah, totally.
Oh yeah. The one positive thing that came out of all this mess of a year is just some really funny stuff. I've seen some hilarious videos, or as you know, our prime minister in Italy, Giuseppe Conte, he's got a big fan club now.
Oh man, and he's not the one of the regional ministers, I can't remember who it is. He puts out the sauciest little videos like berating his citizens. Isaac, it might be
Oh, I don't remember his name, but that went viral. Especially in the beginning of them just screaming at people.
Yeah, but he even put one out. It was on John Oliver actually the other day. He put out this really funny message about Halloween, about how Halloween is an American thing, it's crap, and you're all so stupid to do Halloween kind of thing. But it's the same guy. I want to say it's the minister of Calabria. I'm not sure.
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if it was I've seen some crazy videos of them just because what I think it is too. Already they have to get all of this information super last minute. It's all has to be deciphered and put into leaflets and online in a way that people can deduce the information quickly. And then they get all of these very stupid questions, So like, if you look on the Facebook page of any mayor, the second they make any kind of ordinance because of the pandemic, you see all of the comments below. And I'm just like, if I had to read and deal with that. And so eventually they just lose it and are like, are you really asking me if you can do this during a pandemic when people are dying? Because, they have that first contact with the hospital, with the first responders. So they're seeing stuff that we don't see. They're hearing things that we don't hear. And I think they get, they just go crazy after a while. I think they know that the only way they can get across is if they're like a super angry nonna who's like so offended that you even asked that. You're stupid for asking. So
that's totally the energy that they're projecting. That's so funny.
yeah.
Because I've thought about that. There was a guy in Sicily too that he put out a little video about how it was a mayor, I think I want to say in Catania or something like that, about how, you're all being irresponsible, get in your homes. And he'd go and like scream at people that were
In the park. There's
yeah.
a guy in the park yelling at people to go home. And I was like, dang, wow. You see people scattering.
Isn't that what we love about Italy? I mean, I
kind of loved it.
Yeah, it's, as you said, it's the place you feel most at home. And sometimes when I see stuff like that, I'm just sort of like, and that's the place I feel most at home.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, sometimes you don't. I mean, I think we all, especially right now, you want to bend the rules because you're like so tired of being at home all the time, and you want to see a friend or whatever. And it's just, I understand also on the other side that to be governing anything at the moment is kind of a nightmare.
Yeah.
You're taking a lot of hate from everybody. So it's not like anybody's winning here, everybody's losing. So I understand that like tensions are high and people just got to scream sometimes,
Yep.
I mean, I've probably done it myself. I'll admit it.
Well, but Italians are definitely people who cannot keep their emotions inside.
Yeah. Well, it's healthy though. I think I grew up thinking that you should keep your emotions inside, and to show your emotions is kind of a weakness. And, I think I thought that a lot growing up. And now I'm just like, actually, no, I think you need to get those emotions out in a respectful way, mind you, not in a respectful way most of the time, but you got to get the emotions out and then you get over it quicker,
Yeah, that's true. I think that's well, my friend, we have talked and talked and talked, and we can keep talking.
I know.
Tells me you and I need to do this again. So let's do this again.
I would love that. And anytime, Sarah. Also, so that I can keep you accountable for starting these travelogues again.
Okay. And that's the thing is we need to hold each other accountable, because I have so many things going on, and I'm like, but writing is the thing that I need to do, because it's the thing that it's good for the soul, but it's also the thing apparently the world wants me to do. So.
Well, I mean, it doesn't mean you got to stop doing these, because these are great. I watch your videos all the time and I really enjoy them. So they bring a lot of joy to people, and I know I'm not alone. So good job with all of this. It's a lot of work.
And thank you for being such a wonderful voice for the city of Florence, because I just really appreciate the way you expose it in such what's the right way to put it? I guess you and I are just of the same mind about the way Italy and places in Italy should be promoted, which is, from an ethical point of view, from we're trying to counter over tourism, but also give people meaningful experiences, connect people with locals, and support local artisans. Like all that stuff you're doing is such great work. I really admire you.
Well, thank you. And it goes right back at you. So admiration is shared.
Yeah. Well, it's been so great to talk to you, and I want to hear all about Switzerland and how you're doing. So we'll touch base with you again sometime soon. So everybody who's out there watching, thank you so much for joining Georgette and I today. And if you don't know Georgette again, you should get to know her. She is both girl in Florence and girl in Zug, and you can find her on Instagram, and she has a fantastic website, and she's also on Facebook. So thank you again for joining me today, Georgette. It's been great to see you.
Grazie, dankeschön, merci.
Vediamo presto, sì?
Ci vediamo presto, certo, quando vuoi.
Ciao.
Ciao.